never guess where I am. Vectric HQ for my first ever In the Labs video. I can't wait to show you what I've made, and I'm really excited about being part of the Vectric team right here in the UK. Let's get started. Welcome to the labs. So this is my first project. It's a little bit different than what I normally make. I hope you like it. It's a welcome sign. As you can see, it's a penguin. At least I hope you can tell it's a penguin. And I'm going to show you how I made this. Essentially, we used a couple different methods. I used some pocketing, some VCarving, double-sided machining, and a 3D model. And overall, it came out pretty good. So I'd like to show you how I made it. Let's pop off to the software and see how I did it. Let's have a look at the files that come along with this project. First of all, let's open up one of the two files. And we're going to start off with the head and eyes. Now I cut this first in the end because I felt that I needed to make sure that everything fit together properly, along with it gave me a good chance to try out the materials. I'd never cut in MDF before, so this seemed to be a good spot to start. So the first thing you're going to be presented with is a warning. Make sure you read this and you understand it before you go ahead and cut this part. And we're going to click OK. Before we look at the 2D view, we're going to take a look at the 3D view, and we're going to see what you've been given for a 3D component. So here you've got the outline of the head, along with a key that I've attached to the bottom that actually fits into the back of this sign, and that way it made it easier to lock into place. And also, if you didn't want to glue it in, if you were going to store this, you could pop out the head part and store it separately so it wasn't flopping around wherever you were going to store it. So that might be a handy little feature. There's the white part of the eyes are here, and then the centers of the eyes, which are going to be painted black. And you notice something unusual about these is that this one right here has a built-in 3D tab. I had to do that because there aren't any flat areas to actually put in a tab when we're doing our profile cut. So I had to add that in, and what that does essentially is it leaves behind a lump of material so that I actually can put a tab in that area when I do the profile cut, and you'll see that in a minute. Let's have a look at the 2D view. So again, here's our head, the white part of the eyes, and then the black centers. The head is pretty easy. This is all flat. It's all going to be at the top of the board, so we're not actually going to cut anything there. And this area here we are going to cut along with this little piece here, and that's the bevel, the rounded bevel on that, to make it kind of all blend in nicely. When it comes to the white part of the eyes, we have this area here is going to be cut with the bevel. You'll see here, and then you'll see that the area where the black is going to go, or the center of the eyes, this is the original vector that we got when I created a vector around an object. But this is the actual offset, and I offsetted it slightly so the pocketing that I want to do, because I'm going to pocket this just slightly. I wanted to make sure that the center of the eye was where it belonged. That'll make sure that any extra paint or any finishing that I do will leave me a little bit of space so I can put those in there, and they'll be a perfect fit. And that's with both of those. And then with the actual eyes, the black part of the eyes, you'll see the same thing. We're only going to machine this area here and this area there. And then all of these come with outlines for profile cutting. We have the outside line here for the head. We have this line here to cut out the white part of the eyes. And then each one of these have their own area to profile cut, and that will actually essentially crop off the bottoms along with add in some tabs. I think that's pretty much it. So let's have a look at the actual tooling for that. Let's bring that up. Let's go to our 3D view so we can kind of follow along. So we are going to go ahead and do 3 toolpaths. The first toolpath is going to be a finishing toolpath. We're not going very deep into this MDF, so I didn't feel I had to use a roughing path, so I didn't include that. So we have a 3D finishing with a ball nose, we have a pocket with an end mill, and we have a profile cut with an end mill. And these are ordered up nice, and so we only have to do one tool change, which is kind of handy. So let's have a look at our finishing. Let's quickly preview that to make sure everything looks right. And that's exactly what I expected to see, which is great. Let's take a look at our pocketing. Let's preview that visible toolpath. And again, those pockets are slightly oversized so that our eyes, the center eyes, will be able to fit in there nicely. And then we have our profile cut, and we're going to take a look at mainly this bottom piece right here, just so you can see why that
3D tab is going to help here. So if we preview that visible toolpath, you'll see that it left enough meat behind so we could actually get in a tab, and that's going to hold that into place. Now I want to just point out something here that a lot of you out there wouldn't have a vacuum table. So in my case, I didn't either, and this cut perfectly. But if you do get nervous about these flopping around a little bit or these tabs breaking, you could use some double-sided carpet tape to stick this down to your table with, and that way these definitely would not pop out. So once you've reviewed and edited those toolpaths, you can save them out and put them someplace safe, and then you can go ahead and cut those on your machine. Now let's just go ahead and take a look at the second file. And that's the flippers and the sign. We'll open that up. And again, you're going to be presented with this important information. Make sure you do read it and understand it before you cut any of this. So we're going to click OK, and let's take a look at our 3D view. So this is the top that we have. So we have the two flippers, and then we have the actual sign. And this is going to be a two-sided cut. Okay, so this is the top, and the bottom in the 3D view just looks like a flat bottom. But in a minute, you're going to see we're actually going to machine some of that away. So when we actually look at our tool paths, both sides at the same time, you're going to see that some things have been notched out. But for right now, we're just going to leave that on the front. Let's take a look at our 2D view. We have our vectors for our little posts that we're going to use to make sure that we line up our double-sided properly. We have the flippers, the outline for the flippers, and then we also have some other outline vectors here. So these outlines here are slightly offset, again, a copy of these, and those are going to be pockets. And I wanted to pocket those in there so that these flippers would fit in right, and I know that they always line up. And you'll also notice that the pocket actually will remove some of the V-carving. When I cut it, I decided to do the V-carving and then the pockets, and I learned a lesson about that was the wrong thing to do, and I'll explain that at the very end of the video, so hang tight for that. And when we do our 3D cutting, we're only going to be cutting between these two vectors, so we're going to end up only doing 3D tooling on here. It's going to end up leaving behind these 3D tabs that I've added in, and that also means that we're not going to waste a lot of time cutting the top of this sign, because this is the actual top of your MDF. It's already been treated, it's already been sealed and everything. Why ruin that? We're going to leave that behind, and we're just going to cut in those letters. And then of course we have the vectors for the V-carving letters. Now let's flip this over and look at the back side. We can see that the light green shows us the vectors that are on the other side, so we can understand where everything kind of lies. Let's take a look at these flippers first. So we're going to pocket these areas out, and what this is going to do is it's going to leave a little bit of what I guess I could call a handle on these, so that when you actually put them on the side of the sign, they're actually going to hang over and look like it's actually holding on to the edge of the sign, which is kind of a nice little feature. And this is the keyhole. So this is the hole where I pointed out the key on the head, and that actually fits into this. Again, been slightly offsetted so that it's slightly bigger than what we need, and that was a good thing in the end, and it really was helpful when I was putting this the final thing together. Now, I decided to cut the back side first. I did that for a reason. I was worried that when I was pocketing this out, if I had already cut the top, and if the tabs were a little bit rinky-dinky, then it may end up breaking out of the board, and I didn't want that. So I felt if I cut these first on the back side, all these pockets, then I would be in better shape and it would be a much safer process. And it did work out quite well. So let's just have a look at the tooling for the back of this. Let's go to our 3D view, and we're going to start off with our peg holes. So once I secured my material to the table, I did these peg holes. And let's just go ahead and preview those. And that's not too fancy, but you'll see that I used 4 pegs. And then let's have a look at the pockets. And those are the pockets that I cut out of the back of the flippers and the key, which is pretty basic. Those are both, I used both the same tool, so there's no tool changes at all, and everything worked out great. Let's close that down and let's flip over and look at the other side. Now this side has got many more toolpaths, so we're going to go through them one at a time. This is the peg holes file that I actually used. I zeroed off my tabletop and I cut these right into my spoil board, and that way when I flipped over my board with the pegs in it, the back would line up perfectly, which was great. So let's just go ahead and preview that. And when we preview that, you'll see that it actually cuts right through. I'm actually looking at both sides of my project at the same time, so they actually cut right through, and there's still only 4. If there had been 6 or 8, then I knew something was wrong, and everything lined up perfect. So that's great. Let's take a look at our roughing pass for the 3D stuff. That's exactly what I wanted. It's only cutting between those vectors and a little bit over here around the flippers, and that looks great. And you'll see that it kind of peeks through. That's where the actual keyhole is on the other side. So we're going to cut through there a little bit, and I'll be able to see through there, and that looks great. Let's have a look at our 3D finishing. I used a ball nose end mill for that, and it cut quite nicely. I got lots of nice detail, and I'm happy with that. Along with it helps to define my flippers again, which is great. Now the top of the flippers are slightly rounded. It's hard to tell here, so it does do a full finishing across the top of those flippers. They're not flat. I thought that added a bit of nice dimension to the top of the sign. Let's go ahead and look at our flipper pockets. Now, like I had said before, when I cut mine, I did the V-carving first and then did the pockets, but I've corrected this file so everything's happy. So we can go ahead and preview those pockets. That looks great. Let's preview our V-carving. It's exactly what I expected. And then this is already profiled around essentially. So if anything, there's going to be a little thin membrane of MDF here. But which is fine, that's great, I don't mind that being there. But here I needed to cut these out and tab those in. So let's just go ahead and have a preview of that. And there we have it. So in the end, you'll see that those flippers look like that. And there's the little handle I was telling you about. And that actually makes it so when you slide those slippers into place, they actually lock up against the side here, and they sort of self-center themselves quite nicely into those pockets. So you can go ahead and save off those or edit those toolpaths to match your machine parameters and also the tools and the materials you have on hand. Save those out and go ahead and cut them. And let's go ahead now down to the shop, and we're going to see how this all worked out.
I hope you enjoyed that. It was a lot of fun making. I learned a whole lot while I was doing it, and I thought I'd maybe take a minute and share some of those things that I learned. First thing I did, I thought it'd be smart if I actually V-carved first and then pocketed out the spot for the flipper. Saved the tool change, but actually what happened was when I pocketed it out, it took out part of my W. Luckily I found it on the floor, so I just glued it back in there again and everything was great. I probably would have done the profile on the outside of these, the rounding over, using a molding toolpath opposed to just a raster cut on a 3D model. That probably would have been much faster as well. We spent a lot of time waiting for that. We could have trimmed some of that down. Lucky mistake with the painting. I dripped some of the paint thinner on it and it messed up the paint. And so I wiped it off, it smeared it, and so I decided to just go with that and I smeared off the paint on the top. So it really does give it a nice sort of icy look. But overall, it went pretty smooth. Oh, and the last thing is that a ruler has two sides. One side is centimeters and one side is inches. You really should check what side of the ruler you're using. Yeah, I made that mistake. But it was okay in the end. I had lots of material to use, so that was great. Anyway, I hope that you liked that. If you did like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please do. And if you have any comments, just leave them below and we'd love to hear them and we'd be sure to answer any questions you have. Anyway, thanks so much, and I can't wait for my next in the labs project.